Should African nations collaborate with each other? A resurgence of Pan-Africanism is emerging, with Niger at the forefront. Following the recent coup, Niger has faced significant challenges, particularly from ECOWAS, which has even threatened the country with sanctions.
ECOWAS is preparing to meet again tomorrow to review its response to the coup in Niger. ECOWAS member countries have so far avoided a military response and are instead using sanctions to put pressure on the junta. They've closed their land borders with Niger, leaving hundreds of trucks stranded and unable to transport cargo. That includes relief materials, and aid agencies want a resolution to the impasse so that supplies can be restocked for people in desperate need.
As a result, Niger has sought to forge alliances with neighboring countries to defend itself against organizations like ECOWAS, which are under Western influence. But what are these new alliances truly about? Will they lead to any meaningful change? Let's find out. In July 2023, Niger's military abruptly ended President Mohamed Bazoum's rule, and the reaction it faced was not welcoming. The Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, a regional bloc that often claims to stand for unity and stability, quickly threatened military intervention. However, the driving force behind this aggressive stance was not just ECOWAS itself, but the heavy influence of Western powers, particularly France and the United States, who have significant military and economic interests in the region. In a bold move of defiance against this external pressure, Niger, alongside Burkina Faso and Mali, formed the Alliance of Sahel States, a coalition that challenges the existing power structures and raises crucial questions about the future of African self-determination and sovereignty. And now, very recently, Niger is collaborating with Nigeria for a security deal. This shows how Niger has turned its back on any external power. It is not even welcoming words from alliances like ECOWAS as it is influenced by the West. But what led Niger to find partnerships within the continent? Why does it need a partner to face alliances like ECOWAS that were supposed to help it? To fully understand the stakes of this unfolding drama, we must first examine why ECOWAS, an organization theoretically dedicated to African unity, responded so harshly to the events in Niger. What underlying forces and historical contexts are driving this aggressive stance? ECOWAS's response to the Niger coup was remarkably swift and unusually severe, threatening military intervention almost immediately. This reaction contrasts sharply with its often slow and measured approach to previous crises in member states. To understand this abrupt shift, we need to unpack the historical, geopolitical, and economic influences at play, especially the significant role of Western powers. Historically, ECOWAS was established to promote economic integration and political stability in West Africa, driven by a vision of African self-reliance and unity. However, over the decades, the organization has become increasingly entangled with Western interests. The reason? Money and military support. Western countries, particularly France and the United States, have invested heavily in ECOWAS, not just financially, but also in shaping its strategic priorities. France's involvement in West Africa is deeply rooted in its colonial past. Despite the formal end of colonial rule, France has maintained a significant military presence in the region under the guise of counterinsurgency operations and peacekeeping missions. Niger, a former French colony, is particularly strategic for France, given its rich uranium resources, which are crucial for France's nuclear energy sector. Losing Niger to a government less sympathetic to French interests would represent a significant blow to Paris, both economically and geopolitically. The United States, meanwhile, sees Niger as a linchpin in its broader strategy to combat insurgency in the Sahel region. With one of its largest drone bases located in Niger, the U.S. has relied on the country as a base of operations for surveillance and strikes against Islamist militants. The coup, therefore, threatened not just the political stability of Niger, but also the continuity of these critical operations. In this context, ECOWAS's aggressive response can be seen as a reaction not just to a breach of democratic norms, but also as an effort to safeguard the strategic interests of its Western backers. The threat of military intervention was less about protecting Nigerian democracy and more about signifying to the world that the West, and by extension ECOWAS, was not willing to tolerate any challenge to its influence in the region. However, This stance has significant consequences. It exposed deep fractures within ECOWAS itself, with member states like Burkina Faso and ECOWAS openly rejecting the bloc's position. These countries, having experienced similar upheavals and sharing a growing skepticism of Western intentions, saw ECOWAS's threat as an extension of Western neo-colony coasm rather than a genuine attempt to uphold regional stability. This aggressive posturing by ECOWAS, driven largely by external influences, did not quell the situation but instead catalyzed a new political alliance, and Niger and Nigeria alliances are one of them. But before then came alliances of saved states. So, what is the Alliance of Sahel States, and what does it represent for the future of African politics? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. The Alliance of Sahel States, composed of Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, represents a seismic shift in the geopolitical landscape of West Africa. This alliance is more than a military coalition. It is a powerful declaration of independence from the traditional influence of Western powers and a direct challenge to the status quo represented by ECOWAS and its Western backers. To understand the significance of this alliance, one must look at the broader context of African geopolitics. For decades, Western countries have maintained a military and economic presence in Africa, under the pretext of promoting stability and development. However, this presence has often translated into a form of neo-colonialism, where African countries are pressured to align with Western strategic interests rather than their own. The Alliance of Sahel States marks a clear break from this model. By forming a coalition outside of ECOWAS, these countries are asserting their right to define their own security and political priorities. They are effectively saying that they no longer need or want Western powers dictating their internal affairs. This move is as much about sovereignty as it is about security. It is an assertion of African agency and a rejection of the paternalistic attitudes that have long characterized Western involvement in the continent. Moreover, the alliance is setting a precedent for how African countries can address their security challenges. Instead of relying on foreign military interventions, which often exacerbate local tensions and undermine long-term stability, the alliance is focusing on regional cooperation and local solutions. This includes leveraging traditional conflict resolution mechanisms, strengthening local governance structures, and fostering economic development to address the root causes of insurgency and conflict. This new approach has significant implications. It challenges the narrative that African nations are incapable of managing their affairs and need Western oversight. It also provides a potential blueprint for other regions in Africa that are grappling with similar issues of security and sovereignty. If successful, the Alliance of Sahel States could inspire other African countries to rethink their relationships with Western powers and explore new forms of regional cooperation. Now let's talk about the recent deal between Niger and Nigeria. What does the security deal between Niger and Nigeria signify in the context of regional politics, especially given the tensions that followed Niger's coup? On August 29, 2023, Nigeria and Niger signed a significant agreement aimed at bolstering their security cooperation, signaling a possible thaw in relations that have been strained since the July 2023 coup in Niger. This development comes amidst a backdrop of political turmoil and shifting alliances in West Africa, particularly after the ousting of Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum by a military junta, which strained ties between Niger and its neighbors, including Nigeria. The new agreement, which was formalized in a memorandum of understanding, signed by the defense chiefs of both countries in Niamey, the capital of Niger, marks a critical step in regional diplomacy. According to a statement from the Nigerian military, both parties reaffirmed their commitment to resuming and strengthening collaboration to ensure regional stability and security. This statement highlights the strategic importance both nations place on maintaining stability in the region, despite the political upheaval that has followed Niger's coup. The recent security deal between Niger and Nigeria marks a significant development in West African geopolitics, offering a potential path toward enhanced regional stability. However, it also underscores the complex and often conflicting interests that shape the region's security landscape. As Niger navigates its post-coup reality, the success of this renewed cooperation will depend on its ability to effectively balance its alliances and manage the diverse threats it faces. Ultimately, the deal reflects a pragmatic approach to regional security, recognizing that despite political differences, the need for collaboration in combating shared threats remains paramount. Whether this agreement will lead to lasting stability or simply serve as a temporary fix in a volatile region remains to be seen. However, both Niger and Nigeria understand the importance of working together to ensure regional security, even amidst ongoing political tensions. Now the question is, can the Niger ties with new partners face challenges that will come in their way? The security situation in the Sahel is one of the most complex and challenging in the world. The region is plagued by a range of threats, including Islamist insurgencies, ethnic conflicts, organized crime, and a humanitarian crisis exacerbated by climate change. The question facing the alliance of Sahel states and Nigeria is whether it can effectively address these challenges without the extensive military and financial support that Western powers have traditionally provided. The alliance's strategy appears to be focused on leveraging local knowledge and cultural context to design more effective counterinsurgency strategies. Unlike Western interventions, which often rely on heavy-handed military tactics, the alliance is emphasizing community engagement, local intelligence, and development initiatives as part of a more holistic approach to security. This strategy has its merits. By engaging directly with local communities, the alliance can gain more accurate and timely intelligence, reduce the risk of alienating the very populations they need to win over, and address some of the socio-economic factors that drive the insurgency. This approach also allows them to build trust and cooperation with local actors, which is crucial for any sustainable security strategy. Now the question is, will Western powers respect this new wave of African self-determination, or will they attempt to undermine it to protect their interests? The formation of the alliance of Sahel states and Niger ties with Nigeria presents a direct challenge to the West's long-standing role in African security affairs. For decades, Western countries, particularly France and the United States, have positioned themselves as the primary guarantors of stability in the Sahel, often using the threat of insurgency as a justification for their military presence. However, the emergence of this new alliance suggests that the era of Western oversight may be coming to an end. How will the West respond to this new reality? The stakes are high, and Western powers are unlikely to surrender their influence without a fight. France, in particular, faces a critical juncture. Having been forced out of Mali and facing rising anti-French sentiment across its former colonies, France cannot afford to lose its foothold in Niger. We can expect France to employ a mix of diplomatic pressure, economic leverage, and, potentially, covert operations to destabilize the alliance or coerce it back into the fold. The United States, with its substantial military infrastructure in Niger, is also unlikely to stand by passively. The U.S. might use diplomatic channels to isolate the alliance, applying pressure through international bodies like the United Nations, or using economic sanctions to force compliance. Alternatively, Washington could seek to engage directly with the new alliance, attempting to co-opt its leaders with promises of aid and military support, thereby undermining their independence from within. However, any aggressive move by the West carries significant risks. In a world increasingly wary of foreign intervention, any attempt to undermine the alliance of Sahel states could backfire spectacularly, galvanizing anti-Western sentiment and further isolating Western powers from the African continent. The West must now choose to either adapt to a new reality where African nations demand respect and equal partnership, or risk being left behind in a rapidly changing geopolitical landscape. One potential scenario is that Western powers could shift their strategy from direct intervention to a more supportive role, aligning themselves with the alliance's goals to maintain some level of influence. This could involve providing logistical support, intelligence sharing, and economic aid without dictating terms. This approach would allow the West to stay involved in the region's affairs while respecting the sovereignty and agency of the African states. Alternatively, the West might attempt to play a more divisive role, fostering tensions within the alliance to weaken its unity and effectiveness. By exploiting existing ethnic, political, or ideological divides, Western powers could try to destabilize the alliance from within, ensuring that it remains too fragmented to pose a significant challenge to their interests. In the end, we must ask, could the new alliance ignite a new wave of Pan-Africanism, and inspire other African nations to assert their sovereignty? The formation of the new alliance is more than a regional development. It has the potential to reshape Africa's political landscape. If successful, this alliance could signal a new era of Pan-Africanism, one that emphasizes unity, self-reliance, and a collective rejection of neo-colonial influences. Pan-Africanism, a philosophy that advocates for the solidarity of all African peoples, has a long history. From the independence movements of the mid-20th century to the creation of the African Union, the idea of a united Africa has always been a powerful rallying cry. However, in practice, achieving unity has been challenging, with regional divisions, external pressures, and internal conflicts often undermining efforts at collective action. The alliances could catalyze a renewed Pan-African movement by demonstrating that African nations can work together to address their challenges without foreign interference. By prioritizing regional security and development, this alliance could set a precedent for other African nations to follow. If successful, it could inspire other regions to form similar coalitions, fostering greater intra-African cooperation and reducing dependence on foreign powers. Moreover, the alliance's emphasis on local solutions to local problems could become a model for other regions struggling with similar issues. Whether it's the Great Lakes region dealing with post-conflict reconstruction or the Horn of Africa facing its own set of geopolitical challenges, the message is clear. African problems need African solutions. The rise of such alliances could also bolster efforts towards economic integration. Initiatives like the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, are already paving the way for increased intra-African trade and economic cooperation. A more united and self-reliant Africa could better leverage its collective economic power to negotiate more favorable terms with global trade partners, enhancing the continent's influence on the global stage. However, for this new wave of Pan-Africanism to succeed, it must overcome significant hurdles. The continent is still grappling with deep-rooted challenges, such as political instability, economic inequality, and social fragmentation. Building a new Pan-African movement will require not only political will, but also a commitment to inclusive development, human rights, and democratic governance. Furthermore, the success of the Alliance of Sahel states will depend on its ability to navigate the complex web of international politics. The alliance must build alliances with other African states, regional organizations, and global powers that respect its sovereignty and support its goals. This will require a delicate balance between asserting independence and maintaining constructive engagement with the international community. The coup in Niger and the subsequent formation of the Alliance of Sahel states and ties with nations represent a defining moment in African history. Faced with external pressures and internal threats, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali have chosen a path of self-determination and regional cooperation, challenging the established order of Western dominance in Africa. By forming a new alliance outside of ECOWAS, these nations are asserting their right to govern themselves, free from external interference. This move is more than just a regional power shift. It is a statement that Africa is ready to take control of its destiny. The West, now at a crossroads, must decide whether to respect this emerging independence or risk further alienation by continuing outdated strategies of control. The success of the Alliance of Sahel states could signal a new era of Pan-Africanism, fostering unity, self-reliance, and a more assertive stance on the global stage. The world must now pay attention to Africa's growing call for autonomy and respect. As the continent stands on the cusp of a new era, the choices made today will shape not just the future of Africa, but the global order for years to come. Africa is no longer content to play by the old rules. It is forging a new path. The question is no longer whether Africa can lead, but how it will choose to do so, and how the rest of the world will respond. The time for Africa is now, and the world must pay attention. The new alliances are more than a geopolitical action. It is a powerful assertion of African agency. It represents a new chapter in the long struggle for African unity and self-determination. As the world grapples with shifting power dynamics, Africa's voice is growing louder and more confident. The path ahead is challenging, but the potential for a more united and sovereign Africa is within reach. The decisions made by African leaders today will determine the continent's future role in global affairs and its ability to achieve true independence and prosperity for its people. Do you think Niger is making the right decision? What would happen if more African nations aligned? Let us know in the comment section. Will this start a new wave of Pan-Africanism? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.